In a world of roaring engines, blinding lights, and endless responsibilities, young millionaire Adrian felt a strange silence in his heart. Every day was the same. A hollow echo where something vital was missing. No amount of money or success could fill that void. To the world, he was a symbol of power and perfection. But in his own eyes, he was just a lonely shadow walking beside his life, never truly inside it. He longed for the simple happiness of his childhood, when his grandmother would hold his hand and tell him that love was the only real treasure, not the money in banks or the trophies on shelves. Now, as an adult, he wondered if anyone could ever love him without seeing his wealth first. Everyone seemed to want something from him, but never just him. The thought kept him awake, staring at the ceiling, his heart growing tired of hoping. One peaceful morning, as sunlight gently touched the edges of his mansion, his grandmother called him to her room. Adrian felt a pang of fear as he walked in. She looked weaker, her hands trembling as she reached for his. She made him sit beside her, her touch as warm and safe as it had been when he was a boy. In a soft, serious voice, she reminded him that life wasn't promised and time moved faster than anyone realized. Then, she gave him a condition that struck him to his core. If he wanted to inherit the company she and his late grandfather had built, he had to find true love. Not the kind that came with fake smiles and hidden agendas, but a love for his heart, not his wallet. The words hurt because Adrian knew how difficult that was. He knew how many people saw his bank account before they ever saw his soul. His grandmother squeezed his hand, her voice full of belief. She was certain someone was out there for him, but he had to try. He had to trust that love still existed. Adrian nodded, his heart heavy but unwilling to disappoint her. He wanted to believe it was still possible. Leaving her room, he immediately called his assistant. The plan was simple: arrange a series of blind dates. He needed to meet women who didn't know his name, his face, or his fortune. Maybe then, one of them would see him for who he was. His assistant worked tirelessly, setting up 20 blind dates in a quiet restaurant where names weren't revealed until the end. It was supposed to be a fair chance, a way to let his personality shine first. But from the very first date, disappointment began to build like a slow, gathering storm. The first woman complained he wasn't exciting enough. She wanted more energy, more parties, more noise. When he admitted he preferred quiet evenings, she made an excuse and left. The second woman spent the entire time describing her dream life: a mansion, lavish vacations, a life of luxury. Every dream she painted was clearly designed to be funded by someone else's wallet. The third woman was more interested in taking pictures of her food for social media than having a conversation. And, the fourth, she flat out said a millionaire wasn't enough. She needed a super-rich man. With each date, with each rejection, Adrian felt his heart shrink. Some women walked out early, calling him boring. Others made fun of his quiet nature or the way he dressed. Some just smiled politely and vanished without a word, leaving him to wonder what was so wrong with him. The dates were blind, but the outcome was always the same. The moment they discovered he was a millionaire, their eyes would change. Suddenly, they were overly sweet, asking for expensive gifts, or talking about marriage. Some even demanded he fund their dreams before they even knew his middle name. By the time the 20th woman rejected him, something inside him finally broke. A small, invisible piece of his heart that had been holding on for too long simply let go. He sat alone at the table, staring at the untouched food, wondering if love had just become a transaction. As he walked to his car, the city lights flickered on, tiny stars trapped in glass towers. But even their glow felt cold. He got into his car and just sat there, the silence wrapping around him like a heavy blanket. In that moment, he knew he had to escape. He needed to get away from the noise, the expectations, the constant pressure. He started driving with no destination in mind, just following the empty roads that stretched out like dark ribbons under the night sky. Hours later, the city was a distant memory. The roads grew narrow, flanked by trees and quiet fields. He was in the countryside, a world away from his own. Suddenly, his car started making strange noises, and before he could react, it broke down completely. He was stranded near an old mining village. The air smelled of dust, coal, and damp earth. The houses looked worn, yet alive with a simple warmth. Children ran barefoot in the streets, and small fires burned gently in front of humble homes. Adrian stepped out of his car, feeling tired, frustrated, and strangely small in this quiet world. As he stood there, wondering what to do next, a soft voice spoke from behind him. "Your car looks tired." He turned to see a young woman. Dust smudged her clothes, and she held a bucket of water in one hand. Her face, though weary from work, glowed with a natural light. Her eyes were calm, and they seemed to see deeper than most. She introduced herself as Lena. She didn't stare at his expensive clothes or his watch. She didn't ask who he was or what he was doing there. She simply offered help, the way a kind person helps a stranger, without expecting anything in return. Together, they pushed the car to the side of the road. She pointed him toward a small bench where he could rest, then walked away, toward the mines, her steps tired but strong. Adrian watched her go, feeling a sense of peace he hadn't known in years. This village felt real, unpolished, and honest, the complete opposite of the artificial world he'd just fled. As evening settled, the sky turned a brilliant orange. Adrian sat near his broken-down car, watching the stars appear one by one, thinking about everything that had gone wrong. For the first time, he let himself feel the crushing loneliness he had hidden for so long. Just then, Lena returned from her work. Her hands were dirty, her clothes simple, but her presence was a strange comfort. She sat near him without asking, as if sensing he needed company. She looked at his tired face for a long moment and then asked a question. It was a simple question, but it pierced right through his heart. Are you truly happy, or are you just pretending for others? The words hung in the air. Adrian froze. No one had ever asked him that. No one had ever bothered to look past his success to see the person underneath. He realized he had no answer, not because he didn't know, but because he'd been pretending for so long. He'd forgotten what real happiness even felt like. In that quiet village, under the soft glow of the evening sky, for the first time in his life, he felt seen. Not as a millionaire, not as a symbol of power, but simply as Adrian, a lonely human being, searching for something real. The next morning, Adrian woke up, not to the shrill alarm of his city life, but to the gentle, rhythmic sounds of the mining village. The distant clinking of metal, the low rumble of machinery, and the murmur of voices as people began another long day of hard work. For the first time in what felt like forever, he didn't feel the crushing weight of meetings, deadlines, or the heavy expectations that defined his existence. Instead, a strange calmness settled over him, as if he had stepped into a world that moved slower, breathed deeper, and lived more honestly. He wandered down the dirt path near the mine entrance, watching the workers prepare their tools. They greeted each other with smiles, their faces tired but their eyes holding a peace that baffled him. How could these people, with so little, possess a serenity that the richest people he knew could only dream of? Just then, he saw her. Lena. She was carrying a basket of fresh bread, her hair tied back simply, her clothes dusty but clean. She greeted him with the same warm, unguarded smile from the day before, a smile that didn't ask who he was or what he had, but simply welcomed him as a person. Without a second thought, she handed him a piece of bread. Travelers are always hungry, she said, her voice soft. We always share. Adrian was stunned. It had been so long since anyone had offered him something so simple, so genuine. He took a bite, and the warm, crusty bread tasted better than any five-star meal he'd ever had. It tasted like kindness. Lena walked with him, her steps light on the dusty ground. She explained how the village revolved around the mine. The pay was low, she admitted, but the community was strong. They helped one another when someone was sick. They shared food when someone was hungry. They looked out for each other. Adrian listened, captivated. Her words weren't filled with complaint or jealousy, but with a deep, abiding love for her people. She led him to the small, humble house she shared with her sick father. He had worked in the mines for decades, until his body gave out. Adrian watched as she gently tucked a blanket around the frail man and prepared a bowl of warm soup for him, her movements filled with a tenderness that made something inside Adrian soften. It was a pure, selfless love, a currency far more valuable than anything in his world. He felt an urge to help, but he didn't want to offer money, to tarnish this place with the very thing he was running from. So, he offered something else. Let me carry those tools for you, he said, gesturing to a heavy-looking box. Lena laughed, a light musical sound. You don't look like you're used to heavy lifting, she teased, but her eyes were kind, and she let him help. Throughout the day, Adrian made himself useful in small ways. He moved boxers, fetched water, and helped clear debris from a pathway. He was clumsy and tired, easily, but no one judged him. They saw his effort, not his lack of skill, and for the first time in his life, he felt truly useful in a way that had nothing to do with his name or his bank account. As the afternoon sun cast long shadows, he and Lena found a quiet spot to talk. She spoke of her dream to study medicine, a dream she'd put aside to care for her father. Adrian's heart ached for her. He had the power to make her dream come true in an instant, but he held his tongue, terrified of changing the dynamic between them, of turning their connection into a transaction. Then, she asked about his life. And for the first time with anyone, Adrian was completely honest. He spoke of the loneliness, the way people used him, the way they pretended to love him for what he could give them. Lena listened with a profound empathy that unburdened his soul. Money doesn't make people bad, she said softly. It just shows you who they really are. It makes it easier for them to hide their hearts. Her words echoed in his mind long after she left to finish her work. He watched her from a distance, a small, resilient figure who never stopped, never complained, and carried her kindness like a lantern in the dusty twilight. By evening, the mechanic still hadn't fixed his car, and a secret part of Adrian was deeply grateful for the delay. As the workers gathered around small fires for their simple dinner, Lena invited him to join her group. They welcomed him without question, sharing stories and laughter as if he were one of their own. They passed him a wooden cup of warm sweet tea, and as he held it, a profound sense of belonging washed over him, a feeling he realized he'd been chasing his entire life. Later, when the others had drifted off to bed, he and Lena sat alone by the crackling fire, watching sparks dance into the inky black sky. "Why did you really come here?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "It's more than just a broken car, isn't it?" He hesitated, the truth lodged in his throat. He was afraid it would change how she saw him. Finally, he whispered, "I was tired. Tired of being rejected. Tired of being misunderstood. Tired of being loved for all the wrong reasons." She looked at him, her eyes filled with a wisdom beyond her years. "Sometimes," she said, "rejection isn't a punishment. Sometimes, it's protection. It saves you from the wrong hearts." Their quiet moment was shattered by a sudden commotion. A group of teenagers ran past, whispering excitedly. One of them pointed at Adrian. "I've seen him. In an old magazine at the shop. He looks like that famous businessman." Adrian's blood ran cold. "No, you're mistaken," he said quickly, his voice strained. He couldn't lose this. He couldn't lose her. Not yet. That night, walking back to the small shelter they'd given him, his mind was filled with Lena, her laugh, her voice, the way she looked past the surface and saw the person inside. He was falling for her, more deeply than he thought possible. But a chasm stood between their worlds. He didn't belong here, and bringing her into his world felt like it would destroy the very things he loved about her. Fear grew alongside his affection. How long could he keep his two lives separate? Waking before dawn, Adrian was driven by a need to do something for her. He quietly swept the path outside her small house, repaired the broken step by her door, and left a small basket of fresh fruit he'd bought from a traveling merchant. He left no note, wanting it to be a simple, anonymous act of care. But when he saw her later that day, she knew. She thanked him, a soft blush on her cheeks, and his heart felt like it was glowing. Their bond was growing, quietly and naturally, like a wildflower in an unexpected place. But the truth has a way of finding you. One afternoon, as they walked towards the river to fetch water, the peaceful quiet was ripped apart by the sound of shouting voices and screeching tires. Adrian turned, his stomach dropping. Cars, reporters. They were climbing out, brandishing cameras and microphones like weapons. The villagers gathered, confused and alarmed. A lead reporter sprinted towards him, thrusting a microphone in his face. "We've been searching for you for 3 days. We finally found you." And then, he said the words that shattered Adrian's fragile world into a million pieces. Adrian Hale, the millionaire heir. The name hung in the air, heavy and poisonous. Lena's smile froze. Her eyes widened in shock and disbelief. The bucket she was holding slipped from her grasp, crashing to the ground with a loud clatter. Water spilled across the dust, like a promise washing away. Adrian's heart went silent. He looked at her, his expression a desperate plea, but it was too late. The reporters swarmed him, flashes popping, questions flying, but he didn't see them. He only saw Lena's face, the hurt, the confusion, the betrayal. In a single, devastating moment, everything had changed. The moment Lena realized Adrian was the famous millionaire from the stories, a wave of shock washed over her. Her hands trembled as she turned away, trying to ignore the flashing cameras and reporters shouting questions. Inside, she felt betrayed. How could this kind, genuine man hide something so enormous? To her, honesty was the foundation of everything. Adrian had built so many walls, no matter how gentle he had seemed. She didn't know whether to be angry or sad, so she just walked toward the river, letting tears fall freely as the water reflected the soft evening sun. Adrian reached for her, calling her name, desperately trying to explain, but his voice was lost in the chaos. The camera clicks, the shouting, the sudden curiosity of the villagers had all swallowed his words. They now looked at him with a mix of awe and confusion, hoping this stranger might bring wealth to their small world. A sharp pain pierced Adrian's chest, worse than any rejection he'd faced in the city. The one person who had seen him beyond his money was hurt. Not by greed, but by his own failure to trust her with the truth. He wanted nothing more than to hold her, to tell her she was all that mattered, but he knew she might never forgive him. He feared that all the simple, beautiful moments they had shared could crumble with this single revelation. That thought terrified him more than any business failure ever could. Lena walked quietly back toward the village, avoiding Adrian's gaze. Her mind was a whirlwind of disappointment and confusion. Could she ever look at him the same way again? Adrian stood frozen, his heart heavy with guilt. Feeling the peace he'd found here slipping away like sand through his fingers. He was beginning to understand that love wasn't just about finding someone who saw your heart, but also about trusting them enough to share it completely. That evening, Adrian tried to apologize in small ways. He left food for her father, helped fix a broken fence, and cleared debris from the path. But every gesture felt hollow. Lena barely looked at him, her eyes filled with a guarded sadness. The villagers whispered among themselves. Some admired his efforts, while others warned Lena to be careful. How could a man so rich truly connect with someone so poor? Adrian felt like an outsider in both worlds. He couldn't imagine living without her, yet he feared he had already lost her forever. When night fell, Adrian sat alone near the edge of the mine, staring at the stars, searching for answers. He replayed every laugh, every gentle word, every shared silence with Lena, wondering how it all changed so quickly. In her small house, Lena stared at a flickering candle, the light reflecting the uncertainty in her heart. Had she been foolish to trust someone from such a different world? And yet, she missed the quiet strength she felt when he was near. The feeling of being understood without needing to explain. Though separated by walls of misunderstanding, they both felt the same empty ache that only the absence of love can leave behind. The next morning, Adrian knew he had to leave. Urgent business in the city called him back. Every step toward his car felt heavy, each moment away from Lena like a blade twisting in his chest. The peace and hope he'd found in the village seemed to be slipping further away. Being away might mean losing her for good, losing the one person who saw him as more than a millionaire, losing the chance to love and be loved so purely. But he couldn't abandon his responsibilities. His grandmother's health and his family's company required his immediate attention. The thought of leaving without resolving things with Lena made his heart ache like never before. Lena watched him go, hiding the tears that threatened to fall. She wanted him to succeed. She still cared deeply, but the hurt and anger kept her silent. She couldn't bring herself to call out or wave goodbye. Adrian glanced back at her one last time, a painful mix of hope and despair filling him. He prayed that one day she would understand why he had hidden the truth. He had unwanted to destroy the simplicity of their moments together with the heavy weight of his wealth. He whispered under his breath, as if talking to the stars, "I can't live without you. I need your heart as much as you might need mine." The wind carried his words softly across the village, but they never reached Lena, who felt only a strange, confusing echo of longing. Days turned into nights. Back in the city, Adrian buried himself in work, but nothing filled the void Lena had left. He realized that wealth and power were meaningless without love. No amount of money could buy the warmth and simple joy he had felt with her. Every meeting, every contract, only reminded him of the one heart he wished he could hold. Meanwhile, Lena tried to focus on her life, her father, and the village. But in every quiet moment, she was reminded of Adrian, his laughter, his kindness. She began to wonder if her anger at his secret had hidden her own growing feelings. Was her pride keeping her from acknowledging a love she could no longer deny? The thought terrified her, almost as much as the thought of losing him terrified Adrian. They were both beginning to realize that love wasn't just about happiness. It was about courage, forgiveness, and risk. It was about being willing to let someone in completely, even when the world might judge, even when hearts might break. One evening, Adrian's grandmother, now seriously ill, called him. Her voice was weak but filled with wisdom. "Have you found someone who loves you for who you truly are?" she asked. Adrian whispered, barely holding back tears. "Yes, I have. But I'm afraid I've lost her forever." For the first time, he understood that love could be the most powerful force in the world, but also the most fragile. It could slip away in an instant, if not treated with honesty and trust. He made a silent promise to himself, under city lights that could never shine as brightly as the stars over Lena's village. He would do anything to prove that she was the only one who mattered, even if it meant. After weeks of loneliness in the bustling city, Adrian realized something profound. All the money, all the deals, and all the luxury couldn't fill the void in his heart. The warmth of the village, Lena's gentle smile, the way she saw him for who he was, not what he owned, that was the true treasure he had lost. He made a decision that would change everything. He would go back, not as the powerful millionaire, but as a man ready to win back the heart he had broken. He arrived as the evening sun cast a soft, golden glow over the familiar paths and small homes. Smoke curled gently from the chimneys. He was nervous, but hopeful. Would Lena forgive him? Would she even trust him again? He knew his presence might just make things worse, but love requires courage, and he had to try. He found her near the mine, helping a child carry water. Her hands were still rough, but her movements were full of grace and kindness. He watched for a moment, a mix of awe and longing washing over him. Nothing had changed, except for the shadow of doubt that now clouded her eyes. He approached slowly, his heart pounding. Kneeling before her, he spoke softly, his voice thick with emotion. He told her he hadn't stopped thinking about her, that every moment apart had been filled with regret and a desperate desire to see her again. He confessed he had hidden the truth only because he wanted to be loved for his heart, not his wealth. He never meant to hurt her, never meant to break the trust they had started to build. As he spoke, Lena's eyes glistened with tears, her lips trembling. She heard the raw honesty in his voice, the purity of his intentions. She realized that despite his mistake, his love was real, powerful, and unwavering. The entire village seemed to hold its breath, waiting to see what would happen. Adrian told her he didn't want to win her back with grand gestures or expensive gifts. He wanted to prove his love through actions that truly mattered. He started a small project to improve the village, repairing homes, fixing tools, and bringing in medicine. He helped in the mines, showing respect for their way of life. not trying to change it with his money. At first, Lena watched from a distance, her heart a mix of suspicion and hope. But then she saw the villagers' smiles, their genuine gratitude. She saw Adrian interacting with everyone, laughing naturally, working tirelessly. It was the same man she had met, but now he was more committed, more vulnerable, more real. Her heart began to soften. Days turned into weeks. Adrian stayed, helping without asking for a thing in return. Slowly, Lena began to spend time with him again. She taught him small tasks. They walked together to fetch water. She laughed at his clumsy attempts to help. Quietly, she shared her dreams with him. Adrian listened, cherishing every word, every smile, every glance. He knew he could never take these moments for granted. This was love in its purest, simplest form, worth more than anything in the world. He was earning back her trust, one small act of kindness at a time. One evening, after a long day, Adrian led Lena to a small hill overlooking the village. The sunset painted the sky in fiery colors. He took her hands, looked into her eyes, and told her how she had changed him. She had taught him the value of kindness, patience, and seeing people for who they are. He promised to spend the rest of his life proving his love was endless and unselfish. He asked for her forgiveness, to take his heart completely, promising he would never hide anything from her again, never let her doubt him. Tears streamed down Lena's face as she felt the sincerity in his voice and the depth of his love. This man had risked everything for her trust, for her heart. The anger she had felt was born from the love she already had for him. Slowly, she admitted that she had missed him more than she ever let on. A wave of pure joy washed over Adrian, lifting the heavy burden of guilt from his shoulders. In the golden light of the setting sun, their smiles reflected a new beginning, and the village below seemed to celebrate their reunion in silent harmony. That night, they walked through the village together, talking and laughing, the warmth of the fires and the smiles of the villagers wrapping around them like a comforting blanket. Their connection grew stronger with every step. Adrian's grandmother, hearing of his return and seeing Lena's pure heart, finally smiled. She knew her grandson had found someone who loved him for the man he was inside. She blessed their love from afar, knowing the legacy of honesty and courage she hoped to pass on was safe in their hands. The story that began with misunderstanding and fear had blossomed into hope, trust, and the promise of a love that would last. As they sat under the starry sky, holding hands and listening to the gentle sounds of the village, they both understood. Life can be hard, but real love is patient, forgiving, and worth every single struggle. They made a silent promise to protect this love, to nurture it, and to cherish it forever. Together, they had found something rarer than wealth and more beautiful than any treasure, a heart that truly. Weeks had passed since Adrian returned to the village. With each day he spent beside Lena, he realized something profound. The emptiness he felt back in the city, the gnawing void he tried to fill with money, power, and luxury, it could never be satisfied by those things. The peace he'd found here, the warmth, the genuine connection, that was worth more than all the riches he'd ever owned. He cherished every moment. The quiet mornings, walking with Lena along dirt paths, helping her carry water or firewood. The evenings, sitting under the soft glow of lanterns, talking about dreams, fears, and hopes. He noticed how every small gesture of hers carried a strength and a purity he'd never seen before. She cared for her father, the villagers, even strangers, all without a hint of complaint. The thought of losing her terrified him more than any business failure ever could. She had become the heart of his world, the reason his life finally felt complete. He made a silent promise to never, ever take her love for granted. Lena, too, felt her heart soften. She watched Adrian working tirelessly alongside the villagers. He wasn't showing off his wealth or status. He was genuinely helping. He repaired homes, fixed tools, carried water, and listened patiently to everyone's stories and concerns. Every kind action reminded her of the man she had first met, the one who sat quietly under the stars, asking questions no one else would, showing care without expectation. Slowly, she began to let go of the hurt from their earlier misunderstanding. She started to see that Adrian's love was real, patient, and deep. It could withstand mistakes and the vast differences between their worlds. She allowed herself to imagine a future with him, a soft smile appearing whenever she thought of the gentle warmth he brought into her life. One bright morning, Adrian woke before the sun, his stomach fluttering with a mix of excitement and nerves. He had decided it was time. Time to show Lena, in a real, in a tangible way, just how much she meant to him. He planned a small celebration in the village square. He invited the villagers to help decorate with handmade flowers, lanterns, and simple banners. It wasn't for show. It was to honor her kindness, her courage, and the love she had inspired in him. He even asked the children to help, letting them run freely with small candles in jars. Their laughter filled the air, a sweetness that matched the gentle sunlight falling on the village homes. When Lena arrived, curious about the gathering, she saw him. Adrian, standing in the middle of it all, nervously straightening his jacket, holding a small velvet box. She understood immediately. This was not an ordinary day. Her heart fluttered with anticipation, with hope, and with the lingering fear of being hurt again. Adrian walked toward her slowly, every step deliberate. His heartbeat echoed in his chest like a drum. When he reached her, he took her hands in his and looked deeply into her eyes. He spoke softly, his voice full of honesty and vulnerability. He told her that these past weeks, he had finally learned the true meaning of love, that no amount of wealth could ever replace the joy she had brought into his life, that he couldn't imagine a single day of his future without her by his side. Then, with a deep breath, he knelt before her. He opened the velvet box to reveal a simple, elegant ring. With all the courage in his heart, he asked, "Lena, you are the only one who ever saw my heart. Will you spend your life with me?" Lena's eyes filled with tears. Her hands, still in his, trembled as she covered her mouth. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The silence was thick with shared emotion. The entire village seemed to hold its collective breath. Then, through a whisper, a soft and steady voice finally said, "Yes." In that single moment, Adrian felt as if all the pain, the rejection, and the fear of losing her just melted away. It was replaced by a joy so pure, it made him lightheaded. The villagers erupted into quiet cheers. The children ran around laughing, and the soft evening wind seemed to carry their happiness across the hills, wrapping them both in the warmth of love realized and trust restored. After the proposal, Adrian and Lena spent the following days preparing for their life together. They walked through the village hand in hand, sharing meals with the community, and planning small improvements for everyone. With every shared laugh and every quiet moment, they felt the strength of their bond grow. They had faced misunderstanding, separation, and doubt, and had come out stronger. Their love was patient, honest, and resilient. Hearing the news, Adrian's grandmother smiled warmly from afar. Her heart was at peace, knowing her grandson had finally found someone who loved him for who he truly was, not for his money or his name. She quietly blessed their love. Adrian and Lena dreamed aloud about their future, talking about splitting their time between the city and the village, raising a family that valued kindness and love above all else. Adrian began to introduce Lena to his world, but slowly he showed her that his wealth could be a tool to help people, not a barrier between them. In turn, Lena taught him the joy of simplicity, of humility, and the happiness that comes from caring for others without expectation. Together, they built a bridge between their two worlds, proving that love could unite hearts, no matter the differences in background or status. Every evening, they would return to the quiet comfort of the village and sit under the same stars where their journey had begun, sharing memories, dreams, and silent promises, feeling the steady rhythm of their love connecting them. On the day of their final blessing, they organized a small gathering in the village square. It wasn't extravagant. It was a celebration of life, love, and trust. Villagers shared simple foods, music played on handmade instruments, and children performed little dances to honor the couple. As Adrian held Lena's hand and she leaned into him, they both realized that every struggle, every tear, and every moment of doubt had been worth it. They had found something infinitely rare and precious, something stronger than money, fame, or fear, a love that was real, patient, and forgiving. Standing together under the golden light of the setting sun, their hearts full and their souls intertwined, Adrian whispered softly, "You were the only one who saw my heart." Lena, smiling through happy tears, replied, "And you were the only one who waited for me to trust you." In that quiet, magical moment, the village seemed to hold its breath. The wind carried the soft laughter of children, the gentle songs of the villagers, and the endless promise of a new beginning. From rejection, misunderstanding, and fear, they had discovered something infinitely more valuable than anything money could ever buy. True love, lasting, patient, and forever. Thank you for watching. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe for more content that celebrates the power of love. We'll see you in the next video.